Welcome everyone, thank you for coming out. We're here of course for the launch of the University of Otago's research theme with some key stakeholders, some invited guests and of course the champions of 12.3. The champions of 12.3 is a coalition of organisational representatives from across the New Zealand food supply chain. They have committed to assist Aotearoa in achieving the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal number 12.3, which is to halve food waste by 2030. It's an ambitious goal, but as you'll learn, we have New Zealand's best minds on the job. And after spending some time with this group, I've been with them since their inception in March. After spending some time with this group, I am confident that we'll not only reach it, but I think we can surpass it. We'll hear more from them later in a bit of a discussion, but first I'd like to introduce you all to the Division of Science's Pro-Vice-Chancellor, Professor Richard Barker, and he will introduce the theme.
Ko ruapehu te mauka, ko whangarei te awa, ko Richard Barker ahau, ko ahau te manakura o te rohe ahi karoa. Kia ora Bobby, thanks for the introduction. My name is Richard Barker and I'm the Pro-Vice-Chancellor of the Division of Sciences, and delighted to be asked to come along today to say a few words to help launch Aua Hatanga Parakai, the food waste innovation, our latest research theme. I'd like to welcome the food waste champions to Otago. Some of you I know are resident, I know one or two of you, and I'm looking forward to meeting you later on. I'd also like to acknowledge the presence and leadership of Associate Professor Miranda Morosa, over on my left, Phil Bremer and Sheila Skeet, who are on the steering committee driving this, as well as Francesca Goodman Smith, the Waste Minimisation Manager at Foodstuff, so welcome. And my instructions for this, I had a choice of two. One said speak for 10 minutes, the other said speak 2 or 3 minutes. You'd be pleased to know I went for the latter. And so first thing you do when you prepare for these things is you go to the website just to make sure that you have something appropriate to say. And I see the first thing that it says is that food waste is arguably one of the most pressing societal challenges of our time. And the university and the Division of Sciences place high strategic importance on research that has impact, and this theme is a perfect example. It's also a great example of research collaboration across the university community. I think all divisions are represented, and we see this as a new element in the Division of Science, Food, Nutrition and Health Strategy, which is of great importance to us. The Department of Food Science sits critically in there along with the Department of Human Nutrition. Going to the other great source of information, Wikipedia. I'm a statistician, so I thought I needed to quote some statistics, so I found some. And what I learnt was that households in New Zealand generate an average of 300 kilograms of organic waste per year, of which approximately 170 kilograms is food waste. And I know in my own household, we generate a fair bit of food waste. We do have chickens, so they get a fair bit of it, and I have a composting heap, but I suspect some of it makes it into curbside recycling. And here's another statistic that fits with the other one. Somebody did some research where they sampled curbside waste and found that there was an average of 3 kilograms per week put out by households. So well done to whoever took on that research. Is that you, Miranda?
It was smelly.
Taking a broader view, total waste has got to be enormous when you look right across the supply chain, including right from where it's produced. The theme is going to have 3 research sub-themes that will tackle this problem. They're going to break it down into 3 constituent parts. There's metrics and management, understanding how much food is being wasted, where it is being wasted, and its social, economic and environmental impacts. The second one is technical innovations, using the latest science and technology to make the most of business opportunity that food waste provides. And thirdly, social innovations using behavioural science to understand the drivers responsible for food waste in order to make recommendation on minimisation initiatives, testing solutions and providing impact analysis. If I may finish with a whakatauki, he kai kei aku ringa. there is food at the end of my hands, and according to my research, this is said by a person who uses their basic abilities and resources to create success. And I thought that was entirely appropriate for the launching of this new research thing. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa.
Great, thank you, Richard. Yeah, I think a few of us have been kind of into some bins, figuring out, at least Francesca and I have, measuring kind of different waste streams in our time. Yeah, it is very smelly and interesting. Up next on theme, I guess, I'll now introduce Miranda Morosa. Miranda is Director of Food Waste Innovation and Research Leader of the Social Innovation Sub-Theme. She is an Associate Professor in Consumer Food Science here at the University of Otago. Miranda's behavioural research engages knowledge from fields such as marketing and psychology to provide insights and interventions for improved food system sustainability. Her research creates evidence-based solutions to help people change behaviours. She provides academic consultancy services on food waste to government and businesses, and is the author of the Morosa Report, written for the Parliamentary Environmental Committee, who ran a targeted briefing on food waste in NZ, which looks at the current status of food waste in Aotearoa and provides recommendations for actions. She is also co-chair of the Champions of the 12.3 Initiative.
Thanks, Jimmy, and kia ora koutou, everybody. Good evening. I'm sure you've heard the stats. Globally, 1/3 of all food produced on this planet is wasted, which is phenomenal. 1/3. Obviously, this has huge implications on the status of the planet. Socially, we know that 1 in 9 people globally are malnourished. Yet we're producing enough food to feed everybody. In fact, estimates are if we could recover just half of the amount of food that is currently lost and wasted, that would be enough to feed everybody alone. The environmental costs of wasting food are huge. In fact, reducing food waste has been ranked as the 3rd best action we can take globally to reduce or to tackle climate change. Economically, food loss and waste amounts to economic losses of $940 billion per year. So look, it's a major global issue, and we all know that. That's why we're here tonight, right? There's lots happening globally to address this issue. Some countries like the UK have been working on this project for the good part of 20 years. And there's lots of new players as well. Others, like our friends across the ditch in Australia, they've been making significant progress on this issue in recent years. So they published their National Food Waste Reduction Strategy in 2017, and it's been really interesting to watch developments over there. And I guess of particular interest to me, with my sort of food waste academic hat on, has been what's happening in the research space. So they have a 10-year research cooperative research centre called Fight Food Waste. This brings together industry, research and the community to capitalise on Australia's food waste opportunities. So there's lots of public and private investment. There's heaps, like 123 million Australian dollars has been committed towards this cooperative research effort to date. They've got a really ambitious set of research programs. They're funding an impressive number of PhDs, I think 30 PhD programs, PhD projects as part of this larger program. But tonight is all about what's happening here at home. We are New Zealanders, obviously we're an export agricultural nation. We rely heavily on our clean green image in our export markets. So we've really got every reason to be at the forefront of efforts to reduce food loss and waste. Culturally, we're well positioned to be taking a strong stance on food waste reduction. Te Ao Māori recognises the traditional system in which nothing was wasted. But I guess New Zealand has also been lagging behind, arguably we've been lagging behind international efforts in addressing this issue at a national level at least. But the wheels are finally moving, and we've just heard that in 2018-19, the Parliamentary Environment Select Committee ran a briefing to find out more about the extent of the problem in New Zealand and to learn about what's currently happening, what do we know, what do we don't know, and what needs to be done to move forward in this space. From this, we learned that food waste is a pressing national issue, although we're not entirely sure of how much of an issue. We don't have accurate data on exactly how much is wasted at each of those key steps along the supply chain. We heard that the waste has significant environmental, economic and social implications. At an environment level, food that is landfilled releases methane, which is a greenhouse gas. And although, of course, many of our landfills capture this, MFE estimates are that only about 71% of that methane is captured. At the economic level, food waste imposes costs at all stages of the life cycle, costs to householders from buying food that's not consumed. The average household spends about $644 per year on food which is bought but not eaten. There's obviously costs to businesses who are producing this waste, and then obviously costs to local authorities who are charged with the responsibility of dealing with the waste. In terms of the main social impact of landfilling food waste, it represents a lost opportunity for distributing food to those in need, and COVID has obviously seen a spike in numbers of New Zealanders that are food insecure. But there appears to be an enormous amount of enthusiasm from the submitters and the organisations and businesses they represent to reduce food waste. And there's already a number of fantastic initiatives happening in New Zealand in businesses and homes, and we're going to hear about some of those awesome initiatives tonight. Given the scale and importance of the food waste issue, I guess New Zealand really needs to work in a more coordinated, joined-up approach in order to scale up these current reduction activities. But there's a number of challenges to doing this. We don't yet have a national reduction or food waste reduction target, nor do we have a food waste reduction strategy, nor a prioritisation implementation plan identifying where investment in food waste reduction should be targeted. The good news is that there exists a, international best practice approach for how to tackle this at a national level. And that's a three-pronged approach. It involves setting a target, measuring waste, and then acting to reduce it. So in terms of setting a target, targets set ambition, and ambition motivates action. And the government has recently agreed with the recommendation to include reducing food waste with a reduction target as part of its national food waste, as part of its national waste strategy and implementation plan, which is obviously fantastic. In relation to the second step, the measurement step, the government has agreed with the recommendation to establish a definition and measure of food waste, and has noted that developing a national food waste baseline is the first step in measuring food waste. So MFE is currently progressing this recommendation as part of its broader waste data framework. But look, at the end of the day, what ultimately matters is action. And in relation to this third step, we really need to take bold measures to reduce food loss and waste at every stage of that supply chain. There's really something for everyone to do, and there's lots of recommendations on what could be done in the report. On the research front, as we've just heard, we've established the Food Waste Innovation Research Theme, which harnesses the research expertise from across the arts, sciences, commerce divisions to help provide effective solutions to New Zealand's food waste problems. We've just heard the theme described, so I won't do that, and the different sub-themes. I guess what I would like to say at this point is to take the opportunity to formally thank a number of people. So first of all, Professor Indra Way in the Department of Food Science, Richard Barker and the Division of Sciences, and of course the University for the support for this theme. It is very much appreciated. I'm super excited to launch the theme tonight in this public forum, so thank you for sharing this evening with us. As a theme, we're just starting to engage externally, and tomorrow we're hosting a Stakeholder Innovation Forum where our researchers are going to meet with the champions to help identify priority research questions that must be addressed in order to advance policy and practice efforts. And we really look forward to ongoing collaboration with you all, with the champions. We also look forward to working with each and every one of you in your different capacities. I think there's amazing breadth in the room to tackle this really big, but I think it's a really winnable issue in terms of reducing New Zealand's food waste. So, thank you.
Thank you, Miranda. Up next, I'd like to introduce Tessa Vincent. Tessa has a law and politics background and studied here at Otago University. She founded NZ Food Waste Champions in March this year. She is particularly passionate about food waste reduction because she sees it as a tangible climate change action for every New Zealander to get behind. She's a dear friend of mine and a true inspiration who works hard for what she cares about. She'll be here to introduce the champions.
Thank you, Bobby, and everyone who's turned up today. It's great to see such a big crowd here. I just thought I'd give some background to this wonderful group of people in front of me. And New Zealand Food Waste Champions really came to be for me personally for two main reasons. So climate change is a massive and overwhelming issue. Like, where do we even begin with this huge global challenge? But we all eat dinner every night and we all have engaged with food every day, and to me this is an absolute tangible action that every New Zealander can get behind, and it's also been ranked through a really rigorous research project as the third best climate change action we can take. So that was a big driver behind this organisation at a personal level, but for each of the champions they also have kind of motivations from a social and economic lens as well. The second big personal connection with this was I came from a political environment, very competitive environment, and I thought, look, we need to come together and collaborate more to solve some of these really big issues. So contacted a few people, and here we are today in this amazing forum with 12 amazing champions, and really looking forward to hearing what they have to say and to hearing some of your questions. So thank you.
Thank you, Tessa, and yeah, get thinking about questions whilst they're talking, so you can ask the panellists after I introduce them. So now to introduce the panellists, there's 9 of the 12 here today, and I'll ask them to speak after I introduce them for a couple of minutes about your organisations. They are roughly in order of the supply chain from production, consumption to disposal. Now this is a linear representation and is a very simplified understanding of how food works and how food waste streams work, and I must acknowledge that it's much more fluid and dynamic than that, if only it was that easy. So first up, I'd like to introduce Susan Goodfellow. She is the founding director at Left Field Innovation Limited, which is a social enterprise business developing sustainable, diversified land use for New Zealand farmers. It aims to provide new and novel food for consumers who care through and understanding of the value, thus linking food producers and consumers, creating greater value for New Zealand farmers.
Thank you, Bobby. Yes, Left Field Innovation was established because we saw a gap or a challenge for farmers around sustainable land use opportunities, and you're probably all aware of some of the climate and environmental impacts of food production. And there's a lot of pressure on farmers to diversify into sustainable land uses, but historically New Zealand's been a commodity producer, and it's all about what can we grow, and the farmers would do that, and they say, well, who's going to buy it? And we saw that it was hugely problematic. The idea that we introduced was we would take a market-led approach to say, well, what does the market want? And then looking at what of those raw materials can we grow in New Zealand, and then how can we turn those into high-value food products for domestic market and for export. So we've been working on this for 3 years. Our target's 100,000 hectares. And I think the interesting thing about the food waste component of what we do is matching the farmers' production and what they grow with the food companies. And we've learned a massive amount about waste. And you might take wheat, for example. We're doing a lot of work in the milling wheat space at the moment. A lot of farmers will grow a variety of wheat, and then they'll sign a contract for supply. It's already planted, and they'll find that it's the wrong variety, and so it will go to animal feed. And so we're breaking that down, and we're taking a much smarter approach where we're connecting the grower with the food company, and we're working that out before contracts are signed and before the seeds are planted. So we're finding that last year it was about 12,000 tonnes of wheat, and it was 100% used for food production or food use. So we're really excited about that. Going forward in the future, around impacts, it's all about credible data. And we've developed a traceability app that uses the data that farmers collect on farm around production, around their water use efficiency, agri-chemical use or the reduction of use, and a number of things like that, including waste, to show consumers when they scan the code on the product how that product has been grown and the production impacts of that product. And I think the exciting thing with being part of the Food Waste Champion Group is that we can deepen what we do to actually find data and provide data back to this group to start to communicate the impact in quantifiable terms. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for that, Susan. Next up we have Anna Yeller. She's the General Manager of both the Bioresource Processing Alliance and Seafood Innovations Limited, and is the Director of Wool Industry Research Limited. Anna previously consulted as a technology scout at Tech Transfer Manager for Bayer. She worked as a business manager at the Sciences for Auckland Uni Services, and ran Callaghan Innovations Global Expert Program for the northern half of the North Island, and her own startup manufacturing business, which she successfully sold in 2010.
Thanks very much for having me. So I'm going to be talking about the Bioresource Processing Alliance, or BPA. I'm the General Manager of, and it's basically a program funded by the Ministry of Business, Innovation and Employment, and we were set up to take biological byproducts from the primary sector and turn them into high-value products for export. So this was a way to get more value back to the growers and the manufacturers and the farmers. We're talking about pre-consumer byproducts. So we basically undertake the research and development at research organisations like the universities, Ag Research, which specialises in land-based animals and fibres, and dairy, things like that. Plant and food research that does horticulture, wine products, and seafood. And we've got Callaghan Innovations Research Division that does a lot of robotics and chemistry, engineering, food science. And we've got Scion. Scion does a lot of biofuels and bioplastics and forestry research. So we undertake the research and development on behalf of companies who usually have some sort of problem that they need to get rid of some byproducts and develop something, or an opportunity that they've seen that they want to get into. So we're talking about products that might not be good enough to export. They might be ugly fruits or seconds, or some peelings from carrots once they've processed carrots. So we do the R&D and the companies commercialise the product. And so it's basically a way for the companies to kind of use our equipment and our scientists and our expertise before they have to invest in it themselves. So we get a project to a point where the company can then say, okay, this is economic, this is worth doing, we'll get the product into market. So that's basically what we do in a nutshell. Thank you.
Thank you. Next we have Matt Dagger. He became the General Manager of Kibosh in 2012. Since then, Kibosh has grown and was recently nominated for the New Zealander of the Year Community Category Award. Kibosh stops quality food from being needlessly discarded and makes sure it reaches those in the Wellington region who need it most.
Thanks, Bobby. Good evening, everyone. My name is Matt. It's really lovely to be here. I've had the pleasure of working with a few of you here on the academic side, so it's really nice to see your faces here again. So Kibosh is a food rescue organisation that straddles the environmental and the social services sector. We link up the food industry with community groups that support people in need. So it's really taking these two issues, the environmental issue of quality surplus food, which has been needlessly wasted, and families, individuals, people in our community that simply don't have enough food to eat. So using a hub model where we have several hubs in Wellington, Lower Hutt, and now Kapiti Horowhenua, we take food from lots of different businesses, supermarkets, factories, orchards, logistics companies. We take them back to our hubs where teams of volunteers sort through the food, they quality check it, make sure it's safe, and then that food is carefully allocated as per the needs of different charities and then passed on to the charities who in turn support their clients with them. We intentionally pass to organisations rather than individuals because it's the assistance that comes along with the food, be it budget advice, be it social workers, health workers, education, that actually makes the long-term difference, and food is the conduit to take that other assistance to them. So we're really careful not to create dependency by just putting the surplus food out into the community. It's quite strategically redistributed to people who genuinely need it. Kiwibush is one of around 20 different organisations around New Zealand who are all working in a similar sphere. We currently around about 40,000 kilos a month are diverted from landfill, and this is really good quality food that instead reaches people in our community who just simply don't have enough money to buy good food. That's what we do.
Thanks, Matt. Next we have Debra Manning. She's a lawyer, social entrepreneur, and the founder of Kiwi Harvest and the New Zealand Food Network. Kiwi Harvest's mission is simple: to source excess nutritious food and distribute it to organisations across the country that feed those in need, and to protect the environment by stopping surplus food from being discarded. The New Zealand Food Network was founded to support food rescues, food banks and charities across Aotearoa with healthy food through the aggregation and sharing of bulk surplus and donated food.
Thank you and good evening. It's so nice to be here at the University of Otago. So Kiwi Harvest was founded in 2012 here in Dunedin, and on the basis of the success of the model in Dunedin, which started from the back of my car, we grew to become a nationwide organisation with branches around the country. I don't need to go into what food rescue is because Matt has just told you. It's collecting food from supermarkets and cafes and the like, and distributing that to social service frontline agencies who are at the front line of hunger in communities. The New Zealand Food Network came about a couple of years ago when I recognised that there was a gap in the charitable food chain for donated and surplus food in bulk. Food rescues, if you can imagine, collect food in boxes and perhaps 1 to 2 pallet sizes. A pallet is a metre by a metre by a metre, but they don't have the capacity to collect 260 pallets of something, and it might be a chilled product or a frozen product, which is even more difficult to collect and distribute. And that is the extent of the waste that's happening in our country now. So knowing that there was this gap, I set about trying to find somebody to fund a system whereby bulk food products could be aggregated in the North Island and the South Island and then distributed to food rescues on an as needed and as able to handle basis to be then passed on into the community. And it was really difficult to find someone to fund it, because 2 years ago food waste wasn't really on anybody's radar. People weren't really that interested in it. They were pretty quiet about it. They didn't want to talk about it. There was very little data on it. We had a lot of anecdotal data of the food that food rescues were having to turn down and the food that was passing through our systems, but there wasn't really any quantifiable data at that point. But then, of course, COVID hit and the situation became pretty dire with a lot of hospitality industry closing down, but yet some of our primary producers were still producing the food. They had nowhere for it to go. And of course, food insecurity was on the rise and is predicted to rise even more through the unemployment and all of that sort of thing that's a consequence of it. And fortunately, one of the people that I had spoken to remembered me and got in touch and said, what if the government were to fund you? What would you do? And so during the lockdown period and beyond, for 5 to 6 weeks, we got together and we built the New Zealand Food Network under urgency. And the great thing about doing something under urgency is that you don't have a lot of time to overthink decisions. You just have to make them and go with them. And so we've learned along the way, but mostly we've had some huge successes, and we've opened our first warehouse in Auckland on the 27th of July. And our second warehouse in the South Island will be opening towards the end of this year. The New Zealand Food Network serves to provide a solution for bulk, surplus and donated food, and some purchasing through government funding as well, and when I say bulk, I really do mean bulk, so I'm talking 30, 40, 50, 150 pallets at a time of frozen, fresh and ambient dried products. It comes into a warehouse and into cool stores, and then food hubs, which are food rescues and large food banks, go into our online system and they order what is needed. So what we're trying to do is smooth out the supply line for them and give them a more balanced food support package. So instead of getting 30 pallets of cream cheese in commercial size tubs, they can get a mixture of 1 or 2 or 3 pallets once or twice a week of fruit, vegetable, dairy and meat products and things like that. So it's early days for us yet, but we're hopeful that if we get buy-in from all of large businesses, primary producers and the like, that it will be a solution for New Zealand for both the environmental aspect of food waste and of course the social hunger, poverty side of it as well. So that's it.
Thank you, Debra. Next up we have Francesca Goodman-Smith. She is the Waste Minimisation Manager at Foodstuffs New Zealand. Her role involves leading Foodstuffs' national waste minimisation program across more than 130 sites, supporting the diversion of over 85% of waste from landfill and the donation of over 8 million meals to local communities per year. Francesca works across the sector to explore new opportunities for reducing and diverting food waste, delivering on the organisation's corporate social responsibility strategy towards zero waste by 2025. Francesca's master's research quantified retail food waste in New Zealand and provides baseline data for this stage of this food supply chain.
Thanks, Bobby. Kia ora, everyone. I barely need to say anything after that introduction. Thanks very much. I began my food waste journey here at the University of Otago a few years ago, studying with the Department of Human Nutrition and Food Science, supervised by Sheila and Miranda, and that was an amazing eye-opening experience to the potential we have here in Aotearoa to reduce food waste. And it's such a pleasure to be back and speak now from an industry perspective and be part of the food waste research theme. So I'm lucky to be working for Foodstuffs New Zealand, who are the kind of brand owner of New World, Pack and Save and Foursquare supermarkets, helping them to reduce waste. So they began a program for food waste reduction in 2014, and since then they have reduced all waste to landfill by 45%, which is quite an amazing effort for an organisation with the scale that Foodstuffs has. We have now got a much tighter focus on what we want to do around food waste reduction, and we have a target to send zero food waste to landfill by 2025, and a suite of other sustainability related initiatives such as reporting our carbon footprint. But to do that, we can't just work in isolation within our own business and silo. We have a responsibility to work with other organisations across New Zealand, with academics, with government, with other industry partners, with the food rescue sector, to really drive this change forward. And I think being part of this Champions Coalition is such an amazing opportunity to share that knowledge that everybody has and to really drive action to reduce food waste. So thank you very much for hosting us today, and I look forward to working together and hopefully getting some real results in terms of food waste reduction.
Thank you, Francesca. Next up we have Te Kaua Rob. He is the kaiarahi for Māori New Zealand waste organisation Parakore, an educator, waste consultant and documentary photographer. Te Kaua works primarily with Māori communities and organisations to build food resilience and food sovereignty, and minimise waste and protects the living environment through affirmative actions informed by ancestral connections and tikanga Māori.
Tēnā tātou katoa, me hinui ki te rangi ki te papa, ki te mana whenua ki punei, tēnā tātou katoa. He mihi anō tēnei ki te rangatira I huakina tēnei hui, tēnei pō whakanui, tēnā koe te tuakana. Everyone did a really good job of preparing their speeches. I didn't, so I've got notes. My name is Te Kawa, hiri tēnei o ngā iwi o te Mona Nui a Toi. My name is Te Kawa and I'm a descendant of the tribes based in the Bay of Plenty, basically from Whakatane te Tauranga Moana. I'm one of the kaiarahi for the Kaupapa Māori Zero Waste Organisation, Parakore. Para meaning many things, but in this sense, waste, and kore being zero. So quite literally zero waste. We advocate and we push and we support communities to realise a world without waste, informed by our whakapapa, informed by our ancestral connections. And a big part of that is through the medium of kai, through this tino taonga. Kai plays a critical role in everyone's identity. Everyone's identity has kai present in it. And for Māori and our Pacific ancestors, that is very much so. When we speak about where we are from, we refer back to places which sustain us. So our moana, our awa, our ngāhere, whakatauki, proverbs further inform us that our connections, form us of our connections to what sustain us. So when people say, ko te awa, ko te awa ko au, I am the river and the river is me, it is, on a scientific level, it's the molecular identity, the unique identity of that river, which sustains that person, it becomes them. But it's also the mauri of that river. So we remain inherently connected to these places by, as my tuakana Shay Wilson says, literally eating your pepea. So from our worldview, food is not waste, but it can be wasted. When it's not treated as a taonga and what remains is not returned to the whenua to create more kai. The mahi that our organisation does is to support whānau and communities to reconnect and build deeper connections to the natural environment, much of it through the connections to kai. So we support the development of circular systems around kai, from soil to seed to eating to returning the kai to the whenua, to continue that process, continue that cycle. Indigenous peoples all around the world have been practicing regenerative, emissions-free lifestyles for many thousands of years, so are the best positioned to inform solutions to many of the world's challenges, particularly around food waste. I'm very thankful to be a member of the Champions 12.3 whānau, and mihi atu kia koutou, e aku rangatira, and to contribute our worldviews to informing how we can advocate for a world without wasted food, that is regenerating nutrient-rich soils and empowering people and local communities to be creative, innovative and resilient through kai. Nā tōku raurau, nā tō raurau, ka ora ai te iwi. From my food basket, with my food basket and your food basket, we will thrive and we will be well. Tēnā tātou katoa.
Next up we have Nick Bluesley. He's the founder of Everybody Eats. Everybody Eats is a pay-as-you-feel dining experience. Nick completed his master's degree in green economics at Schaumburg College in England, becoming educated in the issue of food waste as well as witnessing various pay-as-you-feel restaurants servicing the community using food directed for landfill. He has brought the concept to Auckland at 2 sites in Cave Road and in Onehunga, and I'm sure he'll tell you about the other ones coming.
Thanks, Bobby. Kia ora, good evening. My name is Nick Bluesley. I am the founder and general manager of Everybody Eats. So we're a charitable dining concept. So we work almost exclusively with perfectly good surplus food that is in almost every case diverted from landfill. And what we do is we turn this food with the help of willing volunteers into 3-course restaurant meals. And we allow the community, anyone and everyone, to come and enjoy that on what we call a pay-as-you-feel basis. So that means they can pay whatever they like. For the last 3 years, probably 50% of our diners have paid nothing for their meals. So that means they're homeless, elderly, suffering substance abuse, mental health issues, you name it, all sorts of different things. But at the same time, we have paying customers who help to subsidise the meals for those that can't afford to pay. And one of the reasons we're able to bring these two very different groups together is by providing what we call restaurant quality meals. So not soup kitchen, it's not slop on a plate. We work with some of the best chefs in New Zealand, so think Josh Emmett, Ben Bailey, literally the cream of the crop, and we turn this into what we hope are really, really delicious and nutritious 3-course meals served at your table. So within the sort of food waste space, what we're trying to do is illustrate that this is not waste at all. This is really precious kai, and that we can elevate it and turn it into something really, really special. So as Bobby said, we started in Auckland, we launched on K Road, we started very quickly feeding 300 people a 3-course meal, so that's 900 plates of food in about an hour and a half. So it's a plate of food out of the kitchen every 6 seconds, so we work quickly. And then that worked really, really well, so we set up a permanent restaurant in Onehunga. So we feed people 5 nights a week there. And 6 weeks ago we launched in Papamoa, so just by Tauranga. And in 2 weeks we're in Wellington. So we've got to the stage where we've kind of proven that this model works, that the community's behind it, that chefs want to get behind it, that we have paying and non-paying customers, 2,000 plus volunteers, and hopefully we'll see you down in Dunedin maybe next year or the year after, hopefully. But yeah, it's been really awesome being part of this group. It's awesome to feel connected within this network, and hopefully you guys have some questions for us. Thank you.
Cheers, Nat. Next I'll bring up Miranda to talk on behalf of Jenny Marshall. So Jenny Marshall is the sector group coordinator at the Waste Management Institute of New Zealand, Waste Mins, and has the project and is the project leader for Love Food Hate Waste, which you might see a lovely poster around, which has raised awareness of household food waste and saved 14,000 tonnes of food waste from being diverted from landfill. Her strengths are project management and inspiring people behind a vision.
Oh, just really quickly, I mentioned earlier we don't have great data for food waste sort of across the supply chain in New Zealand. It's generally thought that in developed nations like New Zealand, the majority of food waste is wasted at a consumer level, retail and consumer level in particular. And so probably almost 4 years ago, the Waste Mins organisation, in conjunction with local councils from around New Zealand, launched the Love Food Hate Waste campaign, and this is all about providing information to New Zealanders, New Zealand householders, on how they can reduce food waste at home. So it's quite practical, tips on how you can store your bread for longer and so forth. And Jenny's made a little video, I believe, which she's going to talk you through her refrigerator.
Kia ora, it's Jenny here from Love Food Hate Waste. Did you know that the average New Zealand family throws out 3 shopping trolleys worth of food every year? That's $640 worth of food that they buy planning to eat but end up wasting. So I'm going to take you on a tour of my kitchen today to show you what I do to reduce how much food I waste. And storage is key, so that's why we're going to go and take a look in my fridge. Firstly, you can see that I've got a lettuce crisper here, and I've got some cabbage inside it. Lettuce and cabbage are both great and will last so much longer if they're stored inside a container like this. Particularly if you've got bagged salad in the summer as well, take it out of that bag and put it into an airtight container. It will last so much longer. You can see that I've also done this with my carrots as well. We did some research at the University of Otago, and carrots will last up to 8 times longer, stored in a clip-cap container with a paper towel at the bottom. The next thing I want to show you is this hummus. I made this about 2 months ago. I had made more than I needed, so I popped it in the freezer. I took it out this morning to defrost, and I'm going to have it on my toast today for lunch. So you can freeze hummus, you can freeze sour cream, you can freeze yogurt. So if you've bought a bit too much, just pop them in the freezer and you can use them at a later date. You can see that I've got some celery here, once again, wrapped in a paper towel in a plastic bag because it will last so much longer and it won't go limp. And I've got some bread here. Bread will last a lot longer in the fridge than it does in your pantry, but ideally, when we buy in bulk, we freeze it first and we only take it out when we need it. Now onto the crisper drawer. You can see these beautiful beetroots out of my garden. I've kept the stalks and the leaves because both of these are edible. In our household we eat the beetroot stalks, we eat the cauliflower, broccoli stalks, and there's some great recipes on the Love Food Hate Waste website showing you how to do that. And you can see I've got some apples here. Apples again last 8 times longer in the fridge than they do out in the fruit bowl. Speaking of fruit bowls, over here you can see our bananas. We keep our bananas separated from the rest of our fruit because they release a gas called ethylene, which makes the fruit go off faster. So that's why we have a second fruit bowl over here. And this is some tangelos and lemons off our trees. So you can see they do look a bit battered and ugly. If they're looking a bit battered and ugly, then I just turn them into some marmalade. Another great tip for lemons is to take those lemons, squeeze them out, and place them into an ice cube tray in your freezer. And you can see I've got some here. What that means is that during the summertime when we want to make salad dressing, I've got some lemons that I can easily use. Another great tip as well, whenever we buy meat, we package it and put it into slightly smaller quantities and freeze it. What that means is that that meat will never go off and it's always available to us in the right portion size when we need it. Last but not least, if you have got some food scraps left that you can't eat, then obviously composting is a good resort. We just have a little compost bin here. You can see some banana peels, some stalks in there, and that goes down to our garden. So I hope I've given you some good tips on how to love food and hate waste.
That was awesome. Some good tips to take away. Personally, in the house that I live in, we have a koha shelf. So often we saw food going to waste, so we have a shelf that you can. I live in a share house, so if you nominate a shelf, a koha shelf, we put it on there when we're finished with it, and then it's free for everyone to grab. Another tip. Nothing on all of those though. Next up, we have Andrew Fisher. He's the founder of EcoStock. He founded EcoStock over 13 years ago, which is New Zealand's largest commercial food recovery and reuse business, with a national network supporting over 140 businesses. In 2019, EcoStock joined forces with Pioneer Energy to create EcoGas. EcoGas will support Auckland Council's 2021 rollout of household food waste collection, providing the processing capability for the next 20 years, which will include the production of biofuels and biofertilizers. Andrew has represented NZ at the APEC Food Loss and Waste Conference in Tokyo and was recently awarded the 2019 SBM Sustainability Superstar Award. He's got a video to play, but would you like to say anything?
I'll go with the video first.
Video first.
As New Zealand's population continues to grow, land becomes scarce and our natural resources come under more pressure than ever. Green solutions are not just fashionable, they are imperative. Sustainable, circular economies are the future, and New Zealand, for the most part, has been quick to embrace technology and new thinking. But in one area, New Zealand has lagged behind much of the developed world. And that area is what we do with our food waste, such as peelings, coffee grinds, and inedible foods. In New Zealand, food waste accounts for over 327,000 tonnes per year, which equates to a busload of food waste lost to landfill every 5 minutes. But all that is about to change. Our peelings, our leftovers, our food scraps and our coffee grinds now have a higher purpose, because they are about to start powering our industries, our homes, and fertilising our crops. EcoStock, together with Pioneer Energy, are building New Zealand's first full-scale clean energy plant powered by food waste at Reparoa.
Reparoa for us is a great facility, and it's actually bang smack in the middle of the North Island.
Once completed in 2022, this 2-hectare clean energy plant using anaerobic digestion technology will take more than 75,000 tonnes of organic waste each year from council curbside collections and industrial food producers. This world-leading clean energy facility will produce biogas and biofertiliser for commercial applications. By establishing EcoGas in Reparoa, with the commercial support of nationwide growing TNG Global, the facility will showcase at commercial scale the provision of green energy solutions in glasshouses commonly seen in Europe and North America. EcoGas is also manufacturing biofertiliser at commercial scale, and this will be adapted according to the nutrient requirements of farmers and growers and managed with the New Zealand's National Overseer Fertiliser Management Program. EcoGas Reparoa will be one of the most advanced clean bioenergy plants in the world and will utilise a team of assembled global experts, drawing on their expertise from design and operation of similar facilities in the United Kingdom, Europe and Australia. Using the very latest technology and the learnings from over 140 facilities, New Zealand's first dedicated full-scale plant will not be playing catch-up. It will be leading the way and demonstrating just how sustainable and efficient clean energy plants can be. There is value in organics, peelings, scraps, burnt toast and mouldy products, and EcoGas Reparoa is doing more than providing a sustainable solution. It's revolutionising our global position in the new era of sustainable societies.
I don't think it's right that we sort of have a great environment, but we don't create great environmental outcomes. We can do both. We shouldn't be afraid to do both, and it will help other industries in New Zealand. It'll help our kids, it'll help our wages, it'll help our salaries, and it'll help our aspirations.
EcoGas is pioneering this critical change to give New Zealand communities and businesses a competitive, clean advantage in today's world. EcoGas, innovation and excellence.
Evening everyone, I've taken up my 3-minute allocation, so I just want to say thank you to everyone, the champions, everyone who's come this evening. There's no one single silver bullet solution to food waste, and it actually takes us all. Food is pretty much the common language worldwide. Food is important to us all, and just having so many solutions on the table, I think it's always making sure we've got more than one option, and there's so many good outcomes. To see the university involved, it's fantastic. Having worked and doing a lot of work in the States and in the UK, it is the universities which are supporting and engaged with the commercial businesses which are assisting with that change, and it's vital. I'm very fortunate with my support from Auckland University, but it's just great to see what's happening here in Otago. It drives the next generation, and there's just so many opportunities to be found out there. So no, thank you, everyone.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you everyone for your introductions and for teaching us a little bit more about what you're up to in your organisations. I'd like to open it up now for questions for the panel. I'll give everyone an opportunity, if anyone has a pressing question now, to ask anything that you've got on your mind. Otherwise, I've got some questions here which I can throw to the panel for them to answer, and we'll pass the microphone around.
One question for Andrew about EcoGas with conversion into the gas and plus what's called the biofertilizer. Is there any work progressing about creating a bioplastic, because food oils also need to use in a other way, just circular economy, to make a sustainable packaging side. So is there any thought or strategic thinking about to use those byproduct or this waste for conversion into bioplastic?
Great question. I probably forgot to say that Reparoa is under construction back there on Friday, where earthworks is done and the tanks are coming up. Bioplastics, I'm working, and this is where we're talking about the universities. So I'm working our Langage on Salisbury Plains, which are working with Portsmouth University, and there's a Welsh Centre of Anaerobic Digestive Excellence, and there's another link with Baywa into Germany. So it's happening, and that's, I guess, why I make the saying that New Zealanders aren't, we're not innovative, but we're the best at taking it to the next stage. And we've got Edmund Hillary took a climbing team, British, and took it to the top of the world. Bruce McLaren took a Mini Cooper racing team and took it to the top of the world. We've got Rutherford who went to Cambridge University and used their facilities to do something. I want to do the same thing with food waste in this country. We don't have to do this the mucky stuff. Let's lift to the next level and get ahead again. That's what Kiwis are good at doing. Make the wheel go faster. Don't worry about inventing another one. So to answer it, it's happening in the world, and probably Anna's probably been one of my biggest assistants. We had through Scion the pilot plant. It's connecting it, trying to avoid going back to first principles again. It's being done already. It's actually getting ourselves back into that space. Having this facility at Reparoa allows the academics at Sion and Auckland and hopefully here to come to us, get that information and have credibility when they go and talk back overseas with what we've got, and that's what we're open to.
Okay, thanks. What has the COVID-19 situation changed in the fight against food waste? Anybody like to take that one? Debra?
I think it's seen, generally speaking, a decrease in food waste from supermarket and consumer levels, and it's seen an increase in food waste, or not an increase, but highlighted the food waste issue at growing and manufacturing levels. And we could talk about that all evening, but that's the short answer.
What do you think are the biggest myths or misconceptions when it comes to food waste? So I've got some debunking. Yeah.
I think New Zealanders, in terms of the New Zealand public generally, are still relatively unaware of the environmental cost of wasting food. So when we talk to householders about their food waste, we often hear things like, "Oh, it doesn't matter. It's compostable. It's natural, organic. It will, And so I think there's a generally a fairly low level of understanding of the environmental costs of food waste. I think it's changing. I think Love Food Hate Waste campaign's been sort of instrumental in some of that change, but I do think there's a general sort of public perception myth around that.
I think there's also a misconception of what the physical object is that we're dealing with. We talk about food waste and people have this concept of compost and scraps, whereas what we see is beautiful, beautiful food with 90% of it, 95% of it is absolutely perfect and edible, yet it's just been needlessly discarded for these really small arbitrary reasons. So we're trying to, it's almost like the conversation needs to move away from food waste to food loss, because it's not waste, it's beautiful food which is being needlessly wasted.
I would also just add to that as well, that's part of the challenge, is to get consumers to appreciate that we are not talking, and I said it in a presentation this morning, we're not talking about the stuff you sweep up off the floor of a factory. This is stuff that's perfectly nutritious and healthy and still good. It just looks ugly or isn't good enough to export perhaps, so it can be made still in another form. And I think also, I'm not sure if it's a misconception, but I was doing some work a few years ago with the United Arab Emirates, who were coming to New Zealand looking at food waste, because they have a really big problem there, because culturally you're meant to have a lot of excess food waste because it shows that you provide, and so they've got to get over that cultural barrier there. So maybe there's a little bit of that probably that gets in the way.
What do you see as the biggest challenge in addressing food waste in New Zealand? Small question. Each of you probably could answer it differently, I think.
Yeah. From where I sit in the pre-consumer space, it's the cost of working with it. The cost of moving stuff around New Zealand, the cost of the people on the front line who maybe don't get paid enough to care about whether something's wasted or not. Trying to get those people on board inside companies is challenging. So, but they're really pivotal to getting it right.
I think the thoughts I have around some of the challenges, I guess, one of the key aspects that we see is the disconnection with food. That's just a thing over there, but there's not really, we're broadly speaking, I'm not going to speak for you, I'm just speaking for the experiences that we've had. People don't quite understand how much it takes to create this apple. Where it comes from, how far it's travelled, the care and the love that goes into it from right across the food supply chain in order to get it to a place or onto your table. I think that's been one of on the flip side, one of the real highlights of some of the mahi that we're doing is supporting marae to build big mara and grow their kai again. there's a massive healing that goes alongside it. All sorts of other things come out, and all sorts of other things, positives come from that. But I think for me that's one of the key things. It transcends a couple of other aspects as well. It's the general disconnection from the environment. It's an over there thing. We're not part of it.
Next question is, what sorts of things would you like to see the research team look at?
I think there's a massive opportunity to harness some of our great tech capability in New Zealand and really take that to a practical level in terms of food waste mitigation. I think Debra could talk to some of the advantages that they've seen at the New Zealand Food Network by actually using a software technology solution to aid that process of food redistribution. And I think from a supermarket level, especially, we are really looking at trialling some really innovative tech solutions to help streamline our processes and prevent waste not only at our point of the supply chain but also further up and down the supply chain too. So research in the tech food waste intersection would be amazing.
Sort of building on that really around the technology and your comment, Bobby, around where food comes from and provenance, which is something we've developed around the traceability apps that shows the farm it came from, their story, nutritional content, and then all the environmental impacts. And then farmers can benchmark how they've improved over time. So I think there's some really exciting things in that space. But I think the first step is that awareness has to come by quantifying it, because it's always someone else's. Is that over their issue that, well, I don't throw much out kind of thing. And unless we can actually put some numbers around what the waste challenge is in New Zealand and then benchmark against how we move forward there, I think is a priority, is something that we really need to do. And the other thing I find quite interesting, just learning that the third most impactful action around climate change is reducing food waste. We don't talk about that much outside of the script. I hadn't heard that around what we can actually do. And then you hear about in New Zealand a lot of changes at the farm level around how farmers should change their practices to mitigate climate change impacts. And I think this is actually low-hanging fruit around if we can reduce waste all the way through the supply chain, but at the farm level, wow, what could we do? And we can't at the moment compare those two metrics because we don't have the data. So I find that really exciting and a key first step.
This might be a random question, but it's just regarding plate waste. When you go out in restaurants, you see people having a lot of plate waste, and I just want to know what are your thoughts on that, because the food is technically being prepared and ready to consume, but if people don't eat them, you can't really recycle them in a way.
Unfortunately, there's always going to be what you describe as plate waste, like the restaurant is anticipating what you want on your plate and you're ordering it hopefully accordingly and being responsible with your ordering and not over ordering. But once that food's been eaten, it can't be consumed by humans. So what we really need to do is encourage our restaurants to do the next best thing. So the next best thing after feeding food to a human is feeding it to an animal. That's the best use of that energy because humans eat animals. And then if it's not that, then you might argue that it's compost or AD, and the last place it wants to go is landfill. Unfortunately, most restaurants put their food into landfill, that it's surplus food. So pig bins, and it's hard in a city like Auckland because our pig farms are miles away, but I have a restaurant in Russell and we work direct with pig farmers. So we're pretty comfortable that if you're not eating it, then the pigs are. Sure.
Also, one of the great things that lots of people are doing, like Everybody Eats, is providing a set menu so they kind of know exactly what they're producing. They're taking that choice element away from it. And it's also an exciting dining experience to go in there and kind of not know what you're going to get. Some of the other things that the hospitality industry can do is offer varying portion sizes at different prices, so people can actually choose modifiable parts of the menu. I don't want fries, I want a salad, or I don't want sides with my dish, or could I have a smaller portion of meat and more vegetables, or tailor that dish more to suit you. And then placing the responsibility back on the consumers is actually offering an opportunity to take your food away with you in a doggy bag and Miranda's done some great research on doggy bag uptake. But I think it's actually making it normal to actually say, I don't want to waste food at the end of my meal. Could I have, can I modify it so that I don't have to do that, or can I take it away with me?
No shame in kitty meal.
So, one of the things that humans have done over time is we've built technologies to create abundance, and I guess in the dining out scene, abundance is the buffet, right? So it's this really proud moment, I don't know, 50 years ago, where you can literally have anything you want at this place, and it creates ridiculous waste. And it's the same in every industry, it's like the same in automobile industry, anything. Like, we have to reverse all of these ridiculous ideas that we had 50 or however many years ago to actually start consuming in a responsible way that's actually sustainable. So don't go to buffets.
Just actually being serious now. It was brought up earlier just around some cultural norms around the amount of food, and it's not my place to tell the marae what that might look like. But having discussions with marae and having discussions with organisations who are putting on very large spreads of kai, it's about coming back to the values for us and having a conversation on what manaakitanga looks like. So manaakitanga might not necessarily be just abundance of food, but it could be about food that's then able to be used for something else, that's then not thrown in the bin and put in the compost and put into the mana, those sorts of things. So it's about sort of stepping back from some of the issues and looking at the values that are inherent in cultural systems and trying to be informed by them.
I had a question. You kind of spoke to Nick of the waste hierarchy of what can we do after it goes into the plate, and no offence, Andrew, but that energy recovery does rightly belong at the bottom of the waste hierarchy. So I'm wondering, how do you plan as a network of researchers and action focused people to prioritise those interventions at the top of the waste hierarchy and not go for the low-hanging fruit that is quite economically economically juicy, as I put it, and not go for interventions which are relatively easy and simple to put in place, which don't provide on really high value returns.
I think it's about working together across the food supply chain, and there's so many opportunities that can arise from having conversations between different parts, and I think that's what this network can really provide. For example, I'm sitting there and working for a retailer, and we've got people from further up the supply chain who have really strong connections with the production sector. And we can work together to think about, how can we change our ordering systems to actually design waste out of the system. And we've got a representative, James, from Sustainable Business Network, and he, has a massive connection of really innovative companies who are kind of at the forefront of providing some of those, solutions that are making a circular economy out of waste and redefining waste as a resource rather than as a waste item. I think there is an element of it which comes to meeting Aotearoa where it's at the moment, and that's why there is a place for things like large-scale food waste collections, because from a household level at the moment, you can't necessarily turn that back into food product that can feed people at the moment. So it's it's actually about what Andrew said before. It's providing solutions that are varied, that can work at different levels of the food supply chain. But I think we're never going to get anywhere if everyone's working on the problem within their own little silo. We need to have those conversations. So yeah, that's what I would say about it. I think it's about coming together around that common goal of reducing food waste and taking steps in that direction. And yes, some might be about diversion to start off with, but with the overarching goal of reducing it.
From where I sit at the at the manufacturer and processor end, it has to be economic for them. I've never come across a company who just does it because it sounds good. You know, it's too expensive to do it. So it has to be something that can make the money, which I think is a good outcome because it increases revenue for New Zealand, which creates jobs and things like that. So you've got to start somewhere for them, and which I think is also a great outcome for the environment too, and for people. So as long as food's not being wasted in the first instance, like I was talking to an organisation called the Upcycled Food Association, which Francesca is involved with, and the question for them, that's about educating people about how it's still okay to eat these sorts of things. It's perfectly good. And the question to them was, are you allowing companies who maybe use 2% of upcycled food in their product to be a member? And they said, look, if they're a big company who uses tons and tons and tons of stuff, that's better than nothing. So, you know, for those companies, they have to start somewhere.
One of the things the coalition has been doing is advocating government for adoption of FR 12.3, and we've actually, the citizens group's got a petition, or has had a petition out at the moment, which has over 1,000 signatures from the New Zealand public supporting this, which is asking our government the new government, whoever that may be, to commit to adopting this target within the first 100 days of being in government. Is that correct? Yep. So if New Zealand does sort of sign up to this international commitment and makes a national commitment, there are a number of destinations for waste which sort of count as making progress towards this target. So food waste only sort of counts in terms of progress towards this target if it is kept in the human and animal supply chain. So food which is either recovered through food rescue organisations, or food which is sent to, which is upcycled, or you know, has some sort of higher value add to it, or food which is turned into animal feed. So these other destinations, while better than landfilling, they won't technically count towards New Zealand's making progress towards that target. So I think that might be, I guess, a policy lever to help with prioritisation of disposal alternatives, if that makes sense. Yeah.
We still think of waste as being, we throw it away and it's gone. And I just wondered, I'm excited about this group coming together about how we can change the perception that waste is a resource. And I just wondered if anyone had any thoughts about that.
From where Matt and I sit in the reusing food, we don't call it waste.
Good.
Because for someone it's a meal, and it's, to coin a phrase used by, and a method used by other organisations, we want it to be mana enhancing as we pass food along to other people. So we don't use the word waste. And we want people to see the value in it. I don't know what your stats are, Matt, but Kiwi Harvest has, since we started in Dunedin, have done the equivalent of 14 million meals, something that was considered to have no value, and you would be getting up there as well, given that Kiwash was the first food rescue in New Zealand. So for us, it's about educating people that there is this value in food, and it's also about educating them, and Finn, I take your point, that let's feed people first. That should be our priority with food that we can reuse. Anybody else have something to comment on that?
I could, but I'm hogging them. Yeah, we're the same. We don't use the word waste so much anymore. It's easy to describe it, but we talk about secondary streams and byproducts and stuff. And also the Upcycled Food Association that I was talking about, they're trying to find a place on the supermarket shelf for upcycled foods, just like gluten-free and organic, so people know where to find it. So that'll be a first sort of helpful thing. So there's no shame in it, it's actually be proud. You'll be pleased to know, certainly in the primary sector, there's a real focus on whole of resource use, so not harvesting more, but using everything, so that will become the norm. So you're not making bigger farms, and you're not farming more fish or whatever, you're just using more with everything, being more resourceful.
A little bit. Yeah, I guess for me, I see it as a resource. If you take in England, companies like mine are actually buying waste now because we've transitioned it to plastics to CO2. So that technology is out there, and you could see it's a resource. I see it as resource recovery. For Ripara, it's going to replace imported synthetic fertiliser, imported CO2. These are things we're dependent on from overseas. So we've got the resource, and it's just across this format. You know, as a resource, you talked about earlier on, it's a value, the dignity of the subject. For us, we talked to also today, it's energy, housing, food. The energy and the housing sort of are popular, but food's actually quite essential, but it's sort of left down here.
Quite a lot of the campaigning from the Love Food Hate Waste campaign has been around, I guess, educating consumers on what is waste and so forth. So in terms of, they've run some campaigns like Complete It, Eat It, Complete It, I can't remember the exact, but you know, showing consumers that it's okay to eat things like broccoli stalks or, you know, carrot peelings or some of these things that would typically have been wasted at a household level. I know Beef and Lamb they ran a campaign earlier this year with meat, and it was sort of eat the whole beast, and it was all around the promotion of offal, and not individually in one meal, but but you know, it was all around I guess educating consumers to eat some of these foods that would have typically been wasted. So just reconceptualising the idea in the mind of the New Zealand public of what is waste and not.
What kind of work is the university doing on a practical level to implement all this really awesome ideas and work that you guys are coming up with? Does anyone know what the university itself is doing to take on this and, you know, make practical change, to lead by example?
The university is taking the food waste issue seriously. They're running some initiatives in the halls. They're actually funding, we have some funding from the waste management contract that they collect the university's waste, and they've put some money into the university to fund summer scholarships. So there is one this year, we're working with this student's going to be working with Sheila Skeeth, looking at measurement of food waste in the university's colleges, just as a starting point. So we don't even have very good data in terms of how much is being produced at that level. I know there is a group of student leads working through the Sustainability Office that are going to pick up on that and run with some initiatives in the colleges next year, which is really exciting. They are funding one of the students here in the room, actually, who's a third-year consumer food science student. She's going to be working over summer, again on a bursary, looking at developing a toolkit for students in their flats to provide some advice on how to reduce food waste at that level. Yeah, I think so the waste management group actually have a person here at the university who's based here at the university, who's funded through them and is really keen to promote waste reduction. So there hasn't been much in the past, but I'm confident that there'll be more moving forward. And I guess as part of the research team, we're really keen to see some action on the ground as well as at a research level. So we'll definitely be promoting and advocating for that as well. And if you've got any really good ideas, then please let us know. Yeah.
The university have been donating their surplus food from their cafes and their events since Kiwi Harvest first started here in 2012.
Cool. Okay. Thank you everybody for your questions, and thank you very much panelists. Sure. Yeah. No, it's great.
I just wanted to thank Trixie Crowe, who's up here at the front. Trixie is the manager for the Food Waste Innovation theme and has been the one that has been sending out emails to everybody and has organised tonight's event. And we're super excited to have her on board. She's a master's student in the Department of Sociology, working with Hugh Campbell and myself. And has come to us from a food rescue background, so it's really well positioned to be managing the theme. So thank you, Trixie, for all your efforts.
Awesome. Yes, thank you, Trixie. And thank you, champions, for kind of lifting the profile and building integrity within our food, within our kai. So thank you very much for all that and your time tonight answering questions. Please hang around, ask some questions privately if you like. We'll have a drink and I think there's food there to enjoy. We'll also be going to Umbrellas for dinner post this if anybody would like to join. So yeah, mix, mingle and enjoy yourself, and thank you very much for having me down here. It's lovely to do that.